What things he shouldn't be doing? What's he done that's so awful?
Well, making public mockery of the royal family, earning all this cash, which is the only reason he's doing it, right? And because he wouldn't be allowed to do things that he got up to, right?
Well, what about what Prince Charles got up to when he was Prince of Wales? How do you feel about that, Raj?
I don't feel very comfortable about that. But he at least conformed himself, brought himself back in line. And,
he spoke about his affair in public. He spoke about his marriage in public.
And he's the king. Not to this extent.
Yes, he did. He was on national television and one of our major broadcasters talking about it in a big documentary.
Here he's causing so much harm and pain.
That's only because it was pre-social media age that it wasn't to this extent. Charles.
Yeah.
Charles,
well, what I'm saying is
went on national television that was international television because of the nature of the interviewee, and he talked about his own love life and his own marriage and his own family and his own feelings, and he's now the king.
Well, now that Harry has made a few millions in his bank account, maybe he should stop now. Yeah, let's try and bring this matter to an end, and not to discredit the royal family any further. He's had his say. He's had his fun.
Did Charles discredit the royal family? Did Charles
slightest.
Discredit the royal family?
No, he didn't. No.
Why
if
not?
If you've got the slightest idea of coming back to the royal family, I think you should take
it. Why didn't Charles discredit the royal family?
Because to say that he was attacked by his brother, right? I mean, who would say that in public, that he was attacked by his brother? But
you have a double standard, Raj. You're perfectly content for a serial adulterer to become king, and you are not content for a young man, his son, to say what he says happened to him in his life that has been so public and, in his words, so difficult.
It was one of those rare moments on LBC radio where you could almost feel the temperature in the room change. The conversation had begun like so many others, a caller ringing in, voice steady but brimming with certainty, ready to lecture the nation on how Prince Harry had gone too far, crossed some sacred line by daring to put words to his own experiences. You could hear the confidence in their tone, the conviction that their argument was the morally superior one. They had their script, the familiar bullet points lifted straight from the morning's headlines, the talking points that have been spoon-fed to the public for years by a press more invested in protecting an institution's image than telling the truth. Their goal was clear: to shame Harry, to paint him as ungrateful, disloyal, disrespectful, and somehow undeserving of the compassion extended to others in positions of power. But Shelagh Fogarty wasn't buying it. In fact, she wasn't even tolerating the pretense. This wasn't going to be another segment where someone parrots the palace line unchallenged. And then, with the kind of precision that can stop a conversation dead in its tracks, she cut through the caller's self-righteousness with one sentence that will be replayed in the minds of those who heard it for a long time. You are content for a serial adulterer to become king, but not for a young man to talk about his difficult public life? It was sharp as a blade, a line that didn't just challenge the caller's hypocrisy, but dragged it into the daylight for all to see. And you could almost hear it, that tiny pause in the caller's breath, the realization that the comfortable ground they had been standing on was suddenly gone. Let's be absolutely clear about who she was referring to. There's no need for coyness here. The serial adulterer in question was King Charles himself, a man whose relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles began while he was still married to Princess Diana. This is not speculation, not a smear cooked up in some tabloid backroom. It is an established, documented fact. It's there in multiple authorized biographies, in televised interviews, and, crucially, in Charles's own public admissions. His marriage to Diana wasn't merely troubled. It was publicly dismantled, piece by piece, before the eyes of a global audience. The humiliating exposure of intimate phone conversations with Camilla, forever etched into history under nicknames like Camillagate and Tampongate, became a defining moment in the royal soap opera. The public outrage at the time was deafening. And yet, here we are, watching as the very same establishment that once choked on its own moral indignation over those events now crowns the man at the center of them and dresses it up as stability, tradition, and continuity. And this is the heart of Sheilagh's point. The hypocrisy is almost blinding. Harry's memoir Spare is not, as its critics so lazily label it, a piece of gossip dressed up in hardcover. It is for the first time the unfiltered voice of the boy we all watched walking behind his mother's coffin. A boy whose grief was global, but whose pain was private, forced into silence by the suffocating rules of a royal code that treats emotional honesty like a security breach. Harry's decision to speak isn't born out of spite, it's born out of necessity. For decades, every word, every facial expression, every personal connection in his life has been monitored, not only by the press, but by an institution that sees its members not as people, but as pieces on a chessboard. And yet, when he finally chooses to speak for himself, the fury is not directed at those who hounded him, stalked him, or sold him out. No, it's directed at him for having the audacity to say, "This is what happened to me." Sheila's outburst stung because it was true. The British media doesn't want Harry as a human being. They want him as a docile prop. They want the smiling prince who waves for the cameras, plays the part, and keeps the dark, complicated truth locked away. They don't want the man who contradicts the palace's carefully crafted PR, but a monarch with documented moral failings? That, somehow, is acceptable. Charles is endlessly praised for his service and duty, as if those words alone can erase the deep emotional wounds left behind in the wake of his choices. Princess Diana's suffering is neatly refiled in the archives as an unfortunate chapter, glossed over for the sake of the monarchy's survival. And that's why Sheila's question landed with such force. It forces anyone who defends Charles while condemning Harry to stare directly at their own selective morality. When you sit down with Spare, the pain is almost tangible. You feel it in the way Harry describes his upbringing, the emotional distance disguised as discipline, the way love was measured out in tiny rationed doses, the moments of connection fleeting and often overshadowed by duty. You feel it in the way he remembers the night his father told him of Diana's death. No embrace, no warmth, just words that dropped like lead. You see it in his account of Camilla's slow but deliberate move into the very heart of the royal circle, the calculated public relations maneuvers that rehabilitated her image and secured her position. This was not simply a father remarrying. This was the rewriting of history in real time, and Harry was forced to watch as the truth was softened, polished, and rebranded, often at the expense of his own reality. The cruelty lies in the double standard. Charles's affair with Camilla was reframed as a grand romance. You know, true love triumphing in the face of adversity, in documentaries and puff pieces. But when Harry chose Meghan Sussex, a woman who brought her own voice, heritage, and independence into the mix, the knives came out. Overnight, he was recast as arrogant, selfish, and disloyal. The same press that had learned to avert its gaze from Charles's adultery went into overdrive to pick apart Harry and Meghan's every move, every word, every expression, and each violation of their privacy was justified under that tired old excuse, public interest. That's why Sheila's retort wasn't just a defense of Harry, it was an exposure of something deeper, a national sickness. Britain has built a monarchy that thrives on selective outrage and a media ecosystem that feeds it. Harry is accused of breaking royal tradition by revealing personal details. But anyone who has been paying attention knows that the House of Windsor has been leaking, briefing, and backstabbing internally for decades. Charles himself sat down for the infamous Jonathan Dimbleby interview, openly admitting his infidelity while still married. That was personal. That was private. That was laid bare before millions. And yet no one labeled him a traitor to the crown. For Harry, telling his story is not an act of vengeance. It's an act of survival. Losing his mother at such a young age and in such a public way left wounds that the palace was either unwilling or incapable of tending to. Spare makes it clear he was taught to swallow his grief, to put on a public face, to prioritize the image of the monarchy over his own mental health. By the time Meghan entered his life, he knew exactly how the game was played, and he knew it was one they could never win if they stayed. The book isn't just a memoir, it's a counter-narrative, a reclaiming of his life from the spin doctors and the courtiers. And so, Sheila's words carry far beyond that one conversation. They remind us how the public has been conditioned to excuse certain scandals while losing their minds over others. If Charles's infidelity can be reframed as a love story worth celebrating, why is Harry's truth-telling treated like treason? The answer is as cynical as it is simple. One keeps the machine running, the other threatens to dismantle it. Harry's voice is dangerous not because it's false, but because it's true, and because it exposes what the monarchy and its allies in the media would rather keep hidden. The saddest part? Britain could have had something better. It could have embraced a monarchy that allowed its members to be human, that made room for grief, for love, for mistakes, for growth. Instead, it chose denial and double standards. And now, whenever someone like Harry speaks, they are branded as disloyal, unhinged, even dangerous. But that moment on the radio, that single cutting question, was a crack in the facade, a reminder that maybe, just maybe, the wrong man has been in the dock all this time.